Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and going to share with you guys a couple of very non-traditional Valentine's Day cards. I got my hands on the Concord and 9th Polka Dot Turnabout stamp set. I did show one of their turnabouts, the Christmas cheer one, during my Christmas series. I've had a lot of people asking me about these and if I would show more. So what these stamp sets are designed is they are background stamps that are designed to be turned every 90 degrees to create multicolored pattern backgrounds. They're very unique and really easy to use. So you flip over the packaging and you take the stamp off the backing paper, and I've just lined up the images with the image here. Concord Night does provide, you could even download a larger one with the full image that you could use, but I don't have too much trouble using the packaging. But I use that as my guide. With this one, it was very easy because this entire background stamp is a perfect square, regardless. If you watch the Christmas one, you know it was a little bit different, so I really needed that guide because all you really want is that mark for the center area. So that's what I did with lining it up. I used a ruler and I'm using a Sharpie here, and I was marking the back of the stamp so it doesn't affect it at all. And then I'm creating my little jig here. Now, the one I had created before would work perfectly fine. I just happen to have a bunch of this. This is actually just some mismatched cardstock that isn't cut straight or anything else, but I cut it down to 6 inches square. And then I used my ruler and marked an X on it. So the center point now is marked. And then to actually use the turnabout stamps is I've got it in my stamp positioner. This works in a MISTI, pretty much any stamp positioner. But I line up my jig first, and then I lined up the stamp so that those center point X's lined up, and then I'm good to go. So now I've got my stamp positioned, and I'm going to position, you can just use cardstock. For this, I'm using my entire card base because it's Neenah 100-pound Desert Storm cardstock. And I actually adhered my card directly onto the jig with just a bit of repositionable adhesive. That makes my life a little bit easier. And then I ink up the stamp. I'm using Distress Oxide inks here, stamped it, and then I turn my little jig once. So now it's facing another direction. I cleaned off my stamp. I'm going to ink it up with a different color of ink. So the first one I had used peeled paint Distress Oxide ink. And then for my second color, I used Iced Spruce Distress Oxide ink. You could also stamp and emboss, anything really. With these turnabout stamps, the sky's the limit. You could also just stamp it once and leave it. You could stamp it twice like this and leave it. But I can't help it. I kind of have to do all 4 times. So I cleaned off my stamp the second time. I turned this one more time. You always want to turn it in the same direction so that each time it's rotated properly, because that's what the uniqueness of this is. It's designed to fill in all those areas. So I turned it one more time, and then I inked up my stamp with Broken China Distress Oxide ink. And then as my final color, rather than use Distress Oxide, this time I'm going to use some Delicata Golden GLITZ ink. So I'm going to ink up my stamp with that, and I'm going to remember to turn my background one more time. And then I'm going to stamp it with that Golden GLITZ ink. And it just gives it a very subtle shimmer on the Neenah Desert Storm. I didn't want this to be too flashy. These are definitely more like masculine cards. So it gives it that little extra something without being too glitzy. So just really pretty. So that's how you use these turnabout stamps. Really easy. Once you do it one time, it becomes easier, and you only have to do it once. You only have to draw those lines once, and then I use, like I said, a fine point Sharpie. It's good to go. I keep my jig in the packaging with the background and with the extra packaging, because that's just how I store everything, in what it came with. And then next time I go to use it, it's all done. So I don't have to do any lining up or fiddling or anything. I can just stick it in my stamp positioner the way I showed, and I'm good to go. So after I had done the background, I actually ended up doing it twice because I decided to make 2 cards because I couldn't decide which cactus image to use. I'm using the Concord 9th Stuck On You stamp set. And it's this huge set with these great big cactus images. So I inked up both of them with VersaFine ONYX black ink, as well as the little pot. And I'm stamping it onto this random strip of Canson XL watercolor paper that I had that just happened to be wide enough for these images. So I decided to use it up. So after I had stamped the images with that, I decided to use those same Distress Oxide inks and watercolor in these images. Really, really simple. I did super speed this up, like 600 times faster than it took me. But I kept everything very simple because especially like this first cactus has all that detail in it already. There wasn't really a need to do any fancy sort of coloring. I just wanted to lay the color down. So to color with my Distress Oxides, I just squish the lid of the ink pad right into the actual ink pad to get some ink transferred onto the inside of the lid. And then I just pick that up with either a paintbrush, or here I'm using a water brush. And then I can just go on about my way. So I did that with both the cactus. I used the peeled paint for that. And then for the pots, I was thinking terracotta pots. That was just front and center in my mind. So I mixed fossilized amber and fired brick Distress Oxide inks with my water brush and added a fair bit of water so I could kind of really mix those together to get that shade of orange that looks very terracotta-ish. And after I had done that, I went back and added another layer of the peeled paint to these cacti images. And you got to be careful with the Distress Oxides because they have that look of chalky texture. It doesn't actually have a chalky texture. I've had people ask that, like, does the color, like, you know, rub off on your fingers? It doesn't. But because it has that chalky texture, you have to be careful when you're watercoloring with them. If you apply too much, it will start to obscure the lines a bit. So I just added that second little bit just to kind of give it a little bit more texture. And then I used the coordinating dies to die cut out those cacti, and I trimmed out the pots. And then I ended up deciding that I wanted to add, there's this cute little flower image in the set. So I stamped that onto another scrap of the watercolor paper. And I also stamped one of the little sign images from that same set onto another piece of the watercolor paper, as well as one of the sentiments in the set. So it says, when life gets prickly, I'll stick with you. I think that's just adorable. So I stamped those, and then same thing. I quickly watercolored those in with more Distress Oxides. I used the worn lipstick on the little flowers, and then I used that same iced spruce on the little sign. And then I just quickly trimmed those out with my scissors. So after I had everything trimmed out, I decided to add some little hearts to the pots. There's 2 little solid heart images in that same stamp set. So I inked those up with the fire brick and just stamped those onto the pots. It's kind of my little nod to Valentine's Day without being overly, you know, pink and red and girly frou-frou, whatever. So added those, and I thought it just gave it a cute little design on these. So after I had stamped that with the Distress Oxide inks, I'm now going to start assembling these cards. So on one of them, I want to stamp the large, it's the Stuck on You sentiment, which again, I love. So I wanted to stamp that on the front of my card, and I wanted to make sure I got it stamped perfectly. So I put it back in my Tim Holtz stamp platform here. And I'm inking up that stamp with VersaFine ONYX black ink, and I'm going to stamp it multiple times so that it stamps really well over this background and is stamped like really black and crisp. So I've got that stamped, and then I'm going to start adhering all of my little elements with a bunch of foam tape so I can pop them right up onto my card. It just gives it that little extra something. So I had arranged everything, the little cactus in their pots off camera. I just taped them together and then added foam tape, and then I'm going to pop on all those other little elements. So the round one got put on the card with the large sentiment, and then this taller cactus, this is the one I'm going to stick that little banner in as if it's sticking out of the cactus, which I just love. And then after I did those, for the insides of my cards, I decided to use all the same images and stamp them with the Distress Oxide inks. And after I had done this, I was like, you know, these, you could have just done this on the front of the cards. I think it turned out adorable. I just loved the different colors and the look on the Neenah Desert Storm. So if you wanted to completely scrap watercoloring the images, you could just stamp all of this on the front of the card. I think it turned out so cute. So I was kind of kicking myself. I was like, I went to all that work watercoloring, but it wasn't a ton of work. But I just really loved how these turned out. So I inked up the pots with that fired brick ink. And then I'm lining up the cactus images, and I'm going to stamp those with the peeled paint ink. So I'm going to ink this one up and stamp it. And then once I have that stamped, I just used my acrylic blocks because I still had those stamps on them for the little banner. I decided to add the little sign to this one, and the when life gets prickly, I'll stick with you sentiment on the inside of this card, just to kind of tie everything together. So I inked that up with the VersaFine ONYX black ink, and then inked up that little flower with the worn lipstick oxide ink and stamped it. And this is when I was like, oh, This could have totally just been, if you want to make a really clean and simple and fun little card, that's what I would do. So on the second one, I masked off the pot there with just a piece of Post-it tape or Post-it note, because this image is so tall, and then inked it up again with that peeled paint Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to stamp that down. And then for this one, I'm going to stamp that large Stuck on You sentiment right over the cactus with that VersaFine ONYX black ink. And I ended up stamping it a couple times again to get it really crisp and black and really stand out on the inside of the card. And then that is going to finish off these cards. So like I said, really quick and easy and fun and very masculine Valentine's Day cards. And then here at the end, I'm including an unboxing. I wasn't asked to do this, but I thought I would show this on video. This company reached out to me not too long ago, and they're called Jord, and they make these amazing wood watches. And I normally don't partner, I don't promote, you know, non-crafting companies. I don't see the point. But after looking at these, I was kind of blown away. So this just showed up, and I was just blown away by how gorgeous this was. So it comes all packaged fancy, and then it comes in this huge wood box, which I wasn't expecting. And the wood box has a fancy little drawer in the bottom that's magnetic, which will hold that wood oil pen, which I'll get to in a second. So this fun little drawer. It's almost like a jewelry box in a way. So the magnetic drawer in the bottom, and then the lid on top is also magnetic, so it doesn't slide around. And then the watches that they have are made out of wood. And they explain everything on their website. This watch doesn't have a battery. I'm holding it right now as I'm doing this, and I'm just fascinated by it. Like, you wind it up like a normal watch, but because it has the glass encasing, you can see all the little, you know, bits and pieces on the inside of the watch, and it's just gorgeous. So I had it custom sized before getting it, so they include the extra pieces in the box along with a polishing cloth, and like I said, that little wood finishing oil brush pen, so you can take care of this because it is literally real wood. It smells amazing. So like I said, I'm collaborating with them. I'll have all the info in my blog post. There'll also be a giveaway and all that. I'm just completely impressed with their customer service and everything. I'm just blown away how gorgeous it is. Normally I don't go this fancy for a Valentine's gift, but this would make an amazing like anniversary gift or a Christmas present or anything like that. So I just thought I would include it in the video because I'm just still mind blown with this. So I will have all the info about this as well as the cards, the supplies, etc. in my blog post linked directly below this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.